Hey everyone. So this is going to be burnt out news. There's a nonstop flow of news. There's a ton going on, and this video is going to provide a base overview of the last week so you can keep up with minimum effort. First up is our top three national news stories. This past weekend, Minnesota was rocked by a politically motivated attack. 57-year-old Vance Bolter posed as a police officer and fatally shot Democratic State Representative Hortman and her husband in their home, and seriously injured State Senator John Hoffman and his wife. Investigators say that Bolter had a hit list of roughly 70 public figures, including Representative Ian Omar and Governor Tim Walz. He had been surveilling homes and left behind notebooks detailing his plans. Authorities say the violence would have continued if not for quick action by local police. Bolter was caught in the woods near his home after a massive manhunt. The motive is still unclear, but the FBI has labeled it as a targeted attack on public servants. A suspect even texted his family saying, quote unquote, "Dad went to war last night." It definitely seems that political motivated attacks have picked up lately, so I wouldn't be surprised if unfortunately these start to become a much more common news story. All right, for our second story, we're going to be focusing on the Israeli-Iran conflict. It escalates. So far, there hasn't been any end in sight. They are sending missiles towards each other. Israel has been routinely doing nighttime and now daytime raids using some of their aircraft, which includes the F-15, the F-22, the F-35. So a lot of really up-to-date American-made military aircraft. The Iranians have essentially been using ballistic missiles. A lot of these missiles are housed in underground bunkers, and then they roll them out at night, and then they shoot the missiles and then roll them back into bunkers. So Israel's been spending a lot of effort trying to find those locations. Whenever this first kicked off, Iran was sending about 200 ballistic missiles at a time towards Israel. Right now, the numbers are in single digits. This is probably the result of Israel spending much more time going after those type of launchers and kind of removing them. The big issue of what this stemmed from was that Israel stated that Iran was moving towards a like early nuclear device, as well as they were essentially buying time during these nuclear talks to continue their efforts. So this has been an issue for over a decade. During the Obama administration, they were talking about building a nuclear deal that's been worked over. It's been kind of removed. So Trump in his first term removed us from that nuclear deal. And then there's been ongoing conversations with other countries as well. This kind of feels like the straw that finally broke the camel's back, and Israel decided to unilaterally attack Iran. Other countries are intercepting those Iranian missiles that are going there. So the US is intercepting some of those missiles. So, things to keep in mind. The Iranian health ministry stated that there's about 220 reported deaths. Meanwhile, Israel is still in the double digits, but not nearly as many. Iran tends to, from where these missiles are hitting, are kind of aiming towards city centers. There was some targeted attacks towards the head of the Israeli like security service and things like that. Israel's goal really is focusing on this nuclear program. So they attacked a lot of centrifuges. They're going after their scientists. They're going after the main generals that are really focused within the Iranian nuclear program. And additionally, they've stated that the assassination of Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah, that's still on the table. So this probably isn't going to be solved in the next few days. However, Trump did leave his G7 meeting in Canada. He left that early, and then he went to the White House in the briefing room. He's essentially reviewing information. So we'll see how that turns out. Israel stated that this war is going to last weeks, not days. Depending on what Trump does in other countries, that really depends. Europe seems to be kind of getting into the flow as well. A few of the top leaders in that area stated that Israel was essentially doing their dirty work. Our third story is going to be the National Parade and the No Kings movement that occurred over the weekend. So, over the weekend, the U.S. Army celebrated its 250th anniversary. They had tanks, helicopters, they had about 6,000 troops, and a massive parade down DC streets. President Trump, whose birthday did coincide with the event, called it a long overdue show of strength. So it's important to remember this isn't Donald Trump's birthday parade. They work together. A bit of a coincidence. But the Army had been working on this for a while. They knew they wanted to celebrate the 250th birthday for them. So it worked out that way. It may have not been as big if it wasn't Trump, but there still have probably been some type of event across the country at the same time. You did have the No Kings protest, and that drew millions of people. This is kind of rebounding off of a lot of the recent riots and protests that you're having in LA, some other cities, due to immigration and ICE enforcement. So these No King protests, they're peaceful marches were held all over 2,000 cities. So Philadelphia, Dallas, Anchorage, LA, obviously, Columbus had a significant amount of these protests. Additionally, when it comes to the parade itself, one side views this as Trump's attempt to project authoritarian control, like in it displays in Russia and North Korea. There's some people that have come out and said that, like, the marching of the US military proved that it was a protest. They didn't do a great job of staying in line or marching in formation. One of the things to understand is that, like, essentially, once you're out of basic and you're not in a specialty group, like somebody who does the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier or a group that goes to burials, you almost never march again. So, yes, they could have probably tightened it up a little bit. However, marching and that whole process isn't really something that is ingrained outside of basic training for most of those people. So, more than likely, what you're really seeing is just people that are like 15 or 10 years out of practice on doing this, and then they had one attempt at a practice, and then that was it. Moving on, we're going to look at the economic snapshot. So, markets have been up over time. They dropped precipitously whenever Trump initially did his tariffs. However, they've went up since then. They're still not necessarily where they were during the original election in November or January, but they're getting close. However, what you're seeing is a lot more people are pulling their money out of the stock market, essentially locking in gains. So, after the roller coaster of some of these Trump's tariff policies, we're on like over 120 different policies. A lot of these individuals are pulling out. So, these are individual investors or hedge funds buying into the stock market. So, that amount has dropped by about 17 billion from April to May, so pretty significant. We see comments as coming from like the Wall Street Journal. Their investors that they talk to say, "Why am I doing this? I don't have time to ride out another crash." So individuals that are relatively close to retirement, or they felt like they've kind of reached the top and they're worried about it, they're starting to pull out. Older investors nearing retirement, they're definitely leading the move, but you're seeing some younger people say the volatility has changed their strategy. So rather than just being all in on stocks and calling it good, they're starting to diversify. They're pulling some more money in cash. Right now, interest rates are relatively high with money, so they're putting those type of investments into something that they feel is a little bit safer. What this means for you, always be cautious with risk. I'm not a financial advisor, so I'm not going to tell you what to invest in, but understand what your risk tolerance is, diversify your investments. That's always a move that everybody says. Watch out for social media. The TikTok star probably isn't a great place to get a financial decision or a stock pick. Go talk to a financial advisor. All right, medicine and science. This is going to be a routine, regular update for us, is focusing on what's happening in the world of medicine, something that happens in science. So this does both. A judge recently overturned the Trump NIH grant cuts. Whenever Trump came in, they reviewed the NIH. They give money to professors and colleges and all sorts of individuals to do scientific research. Trump comes in, he cuts that funding, changes it a lot, essentially halts it. A judge in Boston ruled that that administration's cuts to the NIH related to diversity LGBTQ plus research, that was illegal and discriminatory. So it's only focusing on the research related to diversity and LGBTQ plus. So Judge William Young, he is the judge that did this. He didn't mince words, calling it racial discrimination and bearing down on people of color. Um, what this will affect is about $1 billion in grant funding that will be reinstated. Likely it will be appealed. We'll see what happens. And that ruling will likely have some broader implications as the case moves forward with all of the other grants that are funded. So it's a big moment for researchers that are doing this. They had their grants cut. It may have prevented some future researchers from entering the field because they're seeing some of this funding cut. I will keep you up to date when it comes to some of these funding issues and as the case progresses. Last up, we have some good news that happened over the week. This also kind of involves medicine and is a really cool story. So, this is going to be a graduation. An individual named Lori Wiley. She was supposed to graduate from Boswell High School in Fort Worth, Texas. Instead, she was in hospital bed with sepsis. She was too sick to attend. She essentially had been stuck in the hospital for a while. However, the nurses, doctors, and her school had other plans for her, and they threw her a surprise graduation at the hospital. The photos look awesome. They did a live stream of the ceremony. They hand delivered a diploma by the assistant principal, and she had also walked across the lounge that they had turned into a celebration space in her cap and gown, which had Hello Kitty on it. It looks like a pretty cool time. So whenever this happened, she said, I just started sobbing. I wouldn't change a thing. So it's pretty awesome to make that extra effort for a kid that, for a lot of people, is a major milestone in their life. And they made a pretty significant effort to make sure that she remembered it more than just being stuck in a hospital. So this is the weekly roundup. Obviously, it's not going to cover everything. It gives you a general idea of what's happening nationally, some stories that are going on, at least one good story that you can think about for the week, and we'll keep updating these each week.